Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Diaries with me, Phiona Mbowa, here in Church of Uganda Family TV. Happy to be here, and today, as we said, we talk about anything and everything about marriages. And some of these topics are not our ideal topics, but we need to talk about them because these are things that are affecting us and affecting our marriages. And anything we can do to help, I will bring you anyone that can be able to add a stone to our marriages. This evening, I am privileged to be hosting two people that are going to share with us their stories. As I keep saying, we are not experts. All of us are just sharing their experiences. Next to me is Mr. Stephen Wagobi. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And next to Stephen, we have Racheal Nsubuga. Now, Stephen has been married for 6 months.
Yep.
But before the show was saying they dated for 7 years, so even about to count those years to make it 7.5 years. But Racheal has been married for 10 years. Thank you very much for being here and allowing to share your lives with us. So our topic today is the effect of our parents' marriages on our marriages. Now, coming from your family, definitely the things that you take on or the things that you choose not to take on. So today we're just going to share a part of our experiences, or if that is true. Because for starters, Racheal, do you really think the parents' marriages have an effect on our marriages?
Definitely, our parents' marriages have a big effect on our marriages. Ideally, that is the first step to understand what marriage is. Mm-hmm. So it's like the first picture of marriage. Mm. We pick it from our parents. I was born into a family. I was raised by Christian parents. Okay. They were married in church. Mm. So for me, that was a definition of marriage. That you have to go to church, get married, have a ring, and that is what I understood as marriage till now.
So for you, from the beginning, it was, I must get a ring before I go and start cooking.
Exactly, because that is what we were taught, and not just taught. That is what it was, even in our parents' home. So it is easy to inculcate it into your children, because that is what they see. It is what you teach, but it's also what you do. So it definitely has a big impact on the way we get married and what we do in our marriages.
Okay, and Stephen, do you think the same?
Yeah, I do. I agree. When you experience something, it's a part of you. You don't phase out of that morphing you've been brought up into. So I agree. Parents and their marriages really affect the children, and it creates a serious pathway both in the right or the wrong way. So yeah, it is a very good.
So clearly,
foundation.
Our parents, like it's the first marriage you see.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So you want to be like them.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's
the model you take actually.
That's the model you take.
Be calculating in your mind that, okay, I'll toe this line, things like that.
So does that mean that if I come from a good family, I'm also going to have a good marriage? Is that true? That because I've seen marriage. I've seen marriage displayed this way, so it's the same route I'm going to take. Is that what we mean?
Ideally, that is what it would have been. For example, if you grow up in a marriage, in a family that is, for example, peaceful, provision is there, and you know that is the right thing to do, ideally that is what you're supposed to take with you. Although we also do not underestimate the other issues that come into our lives that can sometimes destroy what our parents put into us. Okay. For example, things to do with, you know how we struggle in adolescence, and then we struggle with our hormones, and if you have not been taught how to handle, you might end up messing yourself up. Okay. Before that, you have a child just before you even get married. But ideally, we also have to understand that much as our parents are an example of our marriages, of the marriages that we should have in our homes, it's also important to understand that they were not perfect. I didn't do a copy and paste from my parents' marriage, but I was encouraged to actually do better for the areas where they didn't do well.
I think you said even mom was mother's union, something like.
She was a leader in Mother's
She was a leader in Mother's Union. So clearly, the picture of marriage was portrayed that way.
Sure.
Was it the same with you, Stephen? Was marriage portrayed in that this is what it should be, father, mother, happily ever after?
My experience is a little bit unique because many mothers and daddy and mommy are available, true, but I also have a set of other mothers that raised us, that nurtured us in one way or another. They portrayed a picture of a family because we have siblings, and both who are biological and those who are from my other mothers. But the picture of happy ever after is painted in the scenarios that we grew up in. We grew up with an experience of experiencing love from our mother, and then you get experience from another mother. So it was a good mix of upbringing in that limelight. So yeah, I can say there are certain nuggets that we got along the way from a different experience of mother A and mother B, but the whole notion was at least there is an eclipse of a family, and that alone kept us moving to death.
Your background comes from a bit of a polygamous.
Absolutely.
So, do you intend to also be polygamous?
No.
Because from what Racheal said, it's actually a depiction. What we've seen is what happened.
And actually, she has a point when she says ideally, what you see when you're young growing up is faintly what groups a picture of your future. But I made a decision that I would not take a certain path. And for example, I said I will not be polygamous. And I'll stick to that word till I pass on, or until the Lord calls me. So I believe that I have to make a choice to be on the positive end, because it has greater rewards than the negative.
I'm not going
Absolutely.
to do this.
Be intentional, and you make yourself clear on it, and you work towards it. You put in some work.
So from what I'm getting from the two of you is you can actually choose to either follow your parents' path if it's good, or you say, no, I'm actually going to choose a different path. I don't know if I'm getting it right.
What I'm saying is you can forge your own destiny, because their experience can't be your experience. Your experience is unique, and the Lord gave you a mandate. So you must be wise enough to know that there are certain things that can accumulate to your growth or to your success if you take certain right decisions. It is just a matter of understanding that your destiny is in your own hands, so you craft it the way you want.
So at some point we should not blame our parents for our bad marriage. Because someone can easily say my marriage is bad because
my parent
that is all I knew. All I know is beating people, so that is what I've done. So from what I'm hearing, Stephen, it is for making a decision that you know.
And work towards it.
I am going to work towards being a good husband to this
The
person.
Lord will give you the grace to do that, because if you make a decision, you get the unction, you get the good notes, you grow in it, and you make an effort. Really, you make an effort towards it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Racheal, what's your take on that? On people who think because I'm coming from maybe a broken home, that is why I should not get married. I've grown up seeing people say, if this is the picture of marriage, I'm actually never going to get married. Well, what's your say on that?
Like Stephen said, I really think we are a product of our choices. Your parents are human. They probably made mistakes. Maybe what they did does not appeal to you, but that doesn't mean that's what you should be like. God gives us an opportunity, and His grace is abundant for us to live the type of life that depicts Christ in our marriages. So I think that it's a deliberate decision and a choice. Number one, it was your father and your mother, and in your generation, it is you and your husband. The generations are different. And by the way, it doesn't even mean that the character will be the same. It will still be different. You're not going to marry your father, you're going to marry another man. So if your father made a mistake somewhere, and this is, I think, where we also need to encourage parents to come out clearly and share some of these stories with their children, especially when they become of age. That simply because I took this path, it does not mean that that is the path that you're supposed to take. I think my
But
parents...
Racheal will come up being told that parents are always right.
Yes, but you see, we've also been brought up in a generation that teaches us about self-esteem and making the right decisions. So we are exposed more than even our parents, because we have been brought up in a generation where we have an independent mind. Our education system suggests that we do need that independent mind. So simply because your father or your mother did this, that doesn't mean that you should carry it on. Because at some point as a human being, you have a sense of judgment to tell that even if my mother did that, it was not the right thing to do. I can do it better, or I can do it differently. So I think we do not need to blame our parents for the mistakes that are happening in our marriage. Actually, they should be a learning experience for us. Because you cannot say that you're going to fall into the same ditch like your mother. Ideally, you're supposed to learn from that. And as parents, this is where we also need to come out and encourage our children that simply because I followed that path, you don't need to follow that same path. You can follow this path because I realized that it is the right path. She has learned from experience, but you're going to avoid it.
Okay. So we should not make the same mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay. I don't know, Stephen, what do you think about that? About people who keep saying, if that is how marriage is, me, I'm not getting married. And for maybe for you, your story is different, but maybe also the many mothers, you were all happy, and but the people I've seen coming from a background like yours, and they're like, if that is marriage, I'll never get married.
No, I can understand, because they're coming from maybe an experience of trauma, maybe an experience of not being loved enough to do better. Because that environment can either establish yourself into a low gear of self-esteem, or you learn to grow out and become a little bit outspoken or outgoing. I don't agree that what the parents went through is what would depict of you, or no, I strongly believe that we have a chance to make things better. So people have gone through such experiences. Of course, they'll attach that in fear to discover the unknown.
What if he does the same thing?
The same thing. So that kind of closure, or that kind of low self-esteem, encloses even the ability to think out loud and say, you know what, I can do a better decision, I can perform better, I can improve on what I saw it not being done well. So I urge anyone who is having a bit of low self-esteem in this area to come up here. It is a good experience to learn how to make a mistake and learn from it as a person. It's also good to take a decision and okay, I've taken a decision, let me see the outcomes of it, either good or bad, so that you have a learning curvature in your life. You can't be static.
And if you find that they are bad, then you're like, okay, I should change.
I'll change it and do something better. So it's good to learn.
Because why I was asking that is, research has shown that most girls get attracted to men who are like their fathers. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm thinking you should even go opposite direction. But what you're saying actually explains it. It is the known. It's what we know. So you tend to relate with that. Okay, so how has the parents' marriages helped you when it comes to the area of conflict resolution?
Personally, I grew up in a home where we had meetings.
Okay.
So there were periodically, I won't say every month or every week, but periodically they would call us. We always had prayer time at 8 p.m. before supper. So that was a time to meet the whole family and tell us about our chores, what you're not doing well, and where we need to improve, including character. So one thing I realized is it created an open discussion at home. It created an open discussion where our parents would rebuke us in love, on the way you should dress, the way you should treat people, respectively, of course, respectfully. So for me, I think that was one of the best things. Creating a platform where a child can tell you, Mommy, I'm not comfortable when you tell me this. For example, when we're becoming of age, as teenagers, there's some things my mother would do and we could kind of feel like that's for kids. So we could tell Mommy, now I'm no longer a kid. I don't like it that way. I think I would prefer if you did it this way. So it created that open communication. And the good thing about open communication is that it also encourages harmony in the home. There are those conflicts, the things that you have held on to that are sorted at that round table when you sit with your family. For example, my father was an open person. He would tell us about the economic status, everything. So by the time you make your decisions and whatever you do, you know that this is what Daddy told us. He told us he doesn't have money for this, he can't afford this, but when he can, he will buy it for us. So that is the kind of home that I grew up in. And I think for me, it is something that has helped me so much. Roundtable talk or quality time with your partner or your children is important for you to actually understand what are they going through. What is this issue in our home and how can it be resolved? So it has also helped us to live in harmony. Harmony not just in our homes but also with the people that we live with that are outside our home.
So seeing how your parents handled, though this comes to how they handled your conflict, later on you're going to tell us how they handled their conflict. But this has helped you also be able to handle the conflict in your home in that way. Okay. It is. How about Stephen?
Not to deviate far, I come in agreement to say that it does make sense when you grow up in an environment which is able to discuss and have open communication, because if that has been provided by someone you're learning from a certain aspiration you want to be, it's easier to get things across, both from one point to another point. You have to respectfully make your state, or state your case, respectfully state your case. And that came about with learning the best time to communicate to the breadwinner. The best time to communicate is when, of course, he's happy. In the event that the caregiver is not happy, you cannot make certain adjustments in demands or requests. Two, it created an environment whereby you needed to know how to work within a budget. As a child, you grow up knowing that, hey, this is how much you can get, this is how far you can work within your means. So if you enter with the mindset that I can be able to work within my means, there are certain conflicts you may not have wanted to start because you are trying to fit within a small budget or a budget X you've been given. So conflict resolution from our parents, it is something that it is an experience that you go through when you have a home where there are very many mothers. You openly can discuss issues with such people in the event that you feel one ear is not listening. If one ear is closed, you reach another ear will try to give a solution. If it doesn't work, you reach out to another ear. So in that kind of environment, you grow up learning to appreciate different opinions, learning to appreciate different experiences, learning to understand that situation A is different from situation B, situation C is different from situation D. So it was just a mix of opinions, a mix of encouraging factors, a mix of experiences, and you grow up at least appreciating that. If it's time to reprimand, there will be different options of reprimanding in case you're growing up. In the event that you feel you cannot communicate your issue to point A, at least point D is there. So it created
a mix and match.
Mix and match, yeah.
So in that regard, I don't know how the way our parents handled their conflict. Now leave alone that us as the children, but the way they handled their conflict, does that affect the way you handle your conflict as married? Not with the children, but you and your spouse.
Yeah, definitely, because I realized that you would hardly ever see them handling a conflict in your presence. My dad was more of an introvert, so he could kind of pull out so easily. But I realized that they did too much talking, and how would you know? The decisions would always come when they've already made them. Like, this is what we have decided. Even though you knew that this was they were not in agreement at
This
first.
was more of mommy than
Because there are, of course, growing up with your parents, there are things you would expect from your dad. This daddy, no, this must have been mommy's idea, but through daddy, yes. So I learned that most of our conflicts need to be handled between the two of us in our bedroom.
close to the children.
Exactly. And when we come out of the bedroom, we are in agreement. This is what we have decided, and this is how we are going to do it.
Whoever supported
it. So you had to just obey. So we did not get an opportunity of saying, Mommy saying this, and Daddy doing this, and Daddy saying this, and Mommy. We really did get that opportunity. But the more we grew up, we also got to realize that you realize that they have that quality time in their bedroom just to talk. And for us women, it really works for us. So for us, we like it will give us time to actually talk as much as we can to pour out, so that at the end of the day, we come out calm and collected.
Okay. And Stephen, how did your parents manage conflicts, and how has that affected you?
Style of conflict management was not as calm as hers. It was a bit of a decision from one end. Of course, that made a situation accrue from a decision taker being in the little less consultation. But its influence on me, I can agree that how you see when conflict is being managed is what you take. If you see conflict being managed in a way which you feel is appropriate, you will take on those skills, because it's all about a skill of conflict management. If you have not been privileged to go through a system that has open discussions, that has people, when they communicate a common objective, you find yourself on the receiving end of decisions that are one-sided and that are not thought through sometimes, because it's out of emotion or it's out of experience of something. So that alone can later lead and translate into someone either trying to do the same or not being able to listen to someone else's opinion. That is why I keep on encouraging that if you have been through such a circumstance, it is better you work towards not going through the same vein with your spouse or your partner, because it limits cooperation, it limits teamwork, and marriage is all about working as a team.
So you don't say, because my father used to resolve conflict like this,
No.
I should also go and
should learn to
I should also start and make sure I resolve conflict.
Like earlier I said, in such a circumstance where you grew up with many mothers, you appreciate difference of opinion. And if you have the capacity to translate this into your home, it will be a much better scenario. At least you come up with more concrete ways forward to certain conflicts in that particular moment.
So at some point, Racheal, I don't know, do you find yourself going back to how, for example, I don't know if you find that if Daddy was quiet, some of us were quiet fathers, do you find yourself reverting to that point that, let me be quiet, Daddy was quiet and it helped you? Or Mommy was quiet, or saying maybe, but Mommy used to speak out and actually that helped her. Do you find yourself going back to that space?
Yes, I do. I realized that, of course, my dad was more on the gentle part, which I'm deliberate about in some of the situations, because you realize that there are situations you look at and realize that gentleness is the way to go here. If I can just keep the peace in this home, we shall overcome this. And then there are times when you really feel like, no, I think here I need to be a little aggressive. My mom is more of a proactive person. She'll see something even before all of you say it. So that is something I think most of us ladies have, and you wouldn't want it to come to your family, especially if it involves danger. So that is where you don't want to hold back or to keep quiet. You want to actually come out and say that, you know what, I think this decision is not good because I foresee trouble. Because the challenge is when you keep quiet, it will come into your family and it will affect you. So I think it's good to balance. You should know when to speak and when to keep peace.
So you should pick a little from mommy.
Exactly.
There's time when mommy has to be there in this fight.
Exactly.
Then there's a time when you must be like dad.
Exactly.
Interesting. How about Stevie?
I agree.
You need to pick.
I fully agree. You need two sides to the coin. There are some days when gentleness is the way to go, and there are some days when you just have to be a little bit aggressive to get what you want, or to get to the line ahead. You need to.
You need to be a little
But
bit energetic, not always. Whatever you said, dear.
I don't agree with that notion. I believe in speak up in mind and get a solution. Speak up in
There's a
mind.
cartoon that there's a gentleman. The gentleman, I think, is there, and the fox keeps saying, whatever you said, dear. Whatever you said, dear. And I'm like, so it's interesting, and I hope people watching us are able to pick. As they're saying, pick what you can from your parents. Whatever you see is actually not good, please do not go ahead. Now, as we speak, all of us are parents or intending to be parents, and clearly we've seen that our parents' marriages really affect our children. In what ways do we have to be better for the sake of our children?
I think we really need to be deliberate, especially when it comes to parenting. I realized that our parenting style is a little different from what our parents did. And I think we're kind of adopting the Western style of parenting, which I think might affect our children in a way or the other.
Okay.
For example, I've realized that we have in our generation we have a kind of children that seem to be more what can I call it? They're not that proactive, they're not that aggressive. And then we grew up in a generation where we are encouraged to actually take responsibility. So we also grew up in a generation whereby our parents took the lead, but now it's like the children are taking the lead.
Definitely.
So in other words, we have the type of children that will tell you what they want and how they want it. And then we kind of follow.
We negotiate.
We follow through, or we negotiate. For example, you couldn't put on TV. You couldn't watch TV before you do your chores. How could you? But now, the child will put it on and you say, no, please first do this. We negotiate with them to actually get things done. So I think we need to be deliberate on parenting, especially when it comes to character building. When it comes to inculcating the fear of God in our children, things like prayer time, gadgets have kind of taken over our homes. Even a 2-year-old now knows everything about a phone, and they will tell you they don't want to pray maybe because of this cartoon or this phone. Exactly.
Yes.
So I think we need to be a little deliberate on that. We need to actually train our kids better. These are African children. So we cannot let them have it all. We need to really come out strong on some things. I mean, the world will not wait upon them to actually think twice like we do it in our homes, where we wait upon them to think, then they make their decision, they do things in their own time, and then we give them that too much liberty to actually get things done when they want them. So I think we also need to be deliberate on the issue of bringing up God-fearing children, like taking them to church, the way they dress, and inculcating the fear of God within their lives. So, for example, we grew up in a generation whereby it was strict when you go to church, you have to be decent, you have to be in a dress. And then here, we bring our children to church in shorts, in leggings, in this. But at some point in time, you want to actually tell them it's bad. But because you said it at an early age, you're finding it so hard to actually tell them, now stop.
Especially when you're the one who bought them.
Exactly. We are the ones who buy the clothes, and then we feel like, now you're so grown, that's too short. So I think as parents, we need to be more deliberate because they are watching us and they think that actually what we are telling them is the gospel truth. Because you're their parent, you're their first line.
As you said, it's the first marriage they're seeing. So I don't know, Stephen, for you, okay, you don't have children yet, but what are those things you'd want in your marriage that you'd like? How would you want your marriage to be in such a way that your children pick from it?
We really mirror what our children do, and we as parents have a duty to create a foundation for these youngsters. I would prefer to have a family, a household which has good morals. It is groomed in the word of the Lord. It is rooted in having respect for people's opinions. It has at least to have a feeling of love and openness. This life I am bringing up, I would prefer it takes up these such good positive attributes, because I have seen them work for certain people. It has gotten them somewhere. The negative things I will not encourage of them. And another thing that I'll take on is to keep on communicating to the little ones that, you know what, this is good, this is bad, consistently, and putting in an effort to see that they are good people.
Okay. Interesting conversation here with Stephen and Racheal about how our parents' marriages are actually affecting our marriages. And we'll go for a break, and then we'll come back and they tell us more about that interesting topic. Thank you very much. Don't go away. Welcome back. Before we went for the break, Stephen was telling us what he thinks that as a parent he should be able to do so that his children look up to him as the first image they have of a marriage. And Racheal was telling us also what she has learned from her parents and how that is being put in effect in her marriage. So we're going to continue this conversation. And Racheal, we've seen that we have gotten the good things out of our parents, and we try to avoid the bad things. Okay, not the bad, but things that we've seen that maybe that's not what we want to take.
Sure.
But a question comes to mind. We have seen very good parents, very good marriages, but they come out and the children's marriages are terrible. What happens there?
Actually, I think that's really absurd, but it is possible still. And I think one of the reasons is, while we think sometimes that things are working out in people's homes, we probably do not know what is behind closed doors. So sometimes I think some of these characteristics are built at home behind the curtains where we do not see as the public.
Okay.
I've seen scenarios whereby in public, for example, you have a perfect couple and everything is fine, but at home, things are not working out, and the children see these things. These are things they are going to pick on, not what you do in public. So, as a parent, what do you do behind closed doors when the whole public is not watching?
So what you're trying to say is maybe the people we are saying are perfect couples. In public, we see you smiling and all that, but at home, it's not what is happening.
Sure, because I'll just give it as an example. You can have a child that is, for example, not so well-mannered. But at home, what happens at home? When no one is watching.
This humble man becomes another person.
He becomes the guy you cannot go to, that person you cannot speak to. Very tough, very quarrelsome lady. And these are the things that the children are watching. I might meet you and probably you have a new car and I'm like, wow, that's so nice. Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. But when I go back home, she's showing off. I mean, who can't afford? Blah, blah. And they are listening in.
So they're depicting the true nature
of who you are at home.
How
do you treat your maid? How do you treat your workers at home? That is what they're depicting outside. During the public gatherings, of course you're the nice
smiling
ones, my children, my home.
My beautiful wife, stand up for recognition.
Let me recognize my beautiful wife, but at home, is she still a beautiful wife? Wow. Do you still agree? Are you still at peace? are you doing what actually you do outside, or outside you're different and at home you're different? So I think our children are picking on the things that we do behind closed doors when the public is not watching. They know the real us.
So they become the real us.
They become the real us.
And it must be frustrating when you see your mother at home is different, and so does then that even bring in a sense of rebellion on behalf of the children?
They become worse. You tell them, you're supposed to do this, don't do that. But they know that is not who you are. You're pretending. So even it's like payback time in public.
You do like this in private,
let me show you in public.
Oh,
you know, but I also think that the truth is we do need to appreciate their parents that have done their best.
And things
But for some reason, things have not worked out.
Sure.
That is why I say that we are all a product of our choices.
Yeah.
Because for sure there are parents that have tried to inculcate a certain type of discipline in a child, and it's really frustrating to parents.
It must be.
I do not know, but I think it's something that we need to prayerfully do, because there are very many things that influence us and our children. So while you're disciplining and showing them the right way you should go, you should turn to God. The Bible says that He's the author and the finisher of our faith. Because the parent has done their part, but God has a part to play in this child life. There's a lot of exposure to things that we do not know through social media, and sometimes they're trying to copy something. There are a lot of things where a lot of sources where our children pick up things. So I really need to say that parents have sometimes done their part. But due to unavoidable circumstances, the children have decided to actually do something different from what they were taught.
Okay. And I think also that applies to parents who have not been a good example, and the children decide, I'll still go out right.
Exactly.
I don't know, Stephen, for you, do you feel the same, that these very good parents, because they're parents, you see their marriage is perfect, you look at their children and even want to cry. Like, where did we go wrong?
Nsubuga's opinion. It is true that God is the starter and the finisher. He begins and finishes. You see, you have to get another hand of help from God. And it is absurd that that happens. It is not right, ideally, because if you have put in an effort as a parent to see your child grow into somebody, and that happens, of course, you get knocked off your feet and you're like, wow, what an experience. But it is there. I have seen of an experience to that point. I have seen it, at least with my own eyes. I have seen a good parent have a kid who is enjoying life to the fullest. But at home, if you go there, they are very, very humble people. That comes through the different, influenced by certain things. The stage of adolescence is very crucial and critical. And I think parents here have to, step up the game of trying to communicate, because in that stage communication is very crucial.
Very important.
You cannot do much, because if you do something that the kid thinks is ultra to what they believe in, they will have an issue of conflict in the home. So your duty as a parent is to nurture this child to a degree whereby at least you can trust the quality of their decision that they are going to make. If you can be able to reach that level and say, my child has made this decision, let me trust it. Or my child has consulted me on this way forward, let me guide. Is where you can at least have that meaningful upbringing. But yeah, of course, there are such scenarios where you are left in awe of a kid being wayward and the father is straight, or vice versa. As I said earlier, the children mirror what a parent does. So as Madam was saying, if you are abusing the workers at home, the children will definitely not respect their little friends around. That's the first case. They'll see you, right? What are you telling me? Yeah. The words that are being said on TV is what they will accumulate. So if you do not have a way of regulating the child, maybe to a certain program that is more developmental, the child will learn the other word and come here and use it in a place that will shock you.
And you'll be ashamed.
So
That's true.
it is part of our work to nurture these people, but also have some little control over what they do, because as she was saying earlier, that how could you be home and switch on the TV, then now you're negotiating. I think that era of parenting to now this era, but we need to go back to that path of making sure our kids are good.
Okay. So, back to our parents' marriages. Are there people, apart from our parents, that actually influence our marriages? Outside the parents, are there people who you say, because, for example, growing up, I had a grandmother who was inseparable, actually great-grandmother, but the two were very inseparable, like the husband and wife. And I told myself, if I am half what they are, I'll be a happy woman. So are there people like that in our lives? I don't know, Racheal, if you have someone like that where you look up to and like, if my marriage can be like this, I have reached.
Yes, I have some. There's a couple I admire. Like I understand that we all have our flaws. We are not perfect, but there is a couple you can look at and you're like, how have they managed?
At least for them, they are close to perfection.
Exactly. I call them my marriage mentors. The reverend that wedded me, he's called Dr. Mbowa and Christian Mbowa. Yes, they wedded us. I love them so much, and for me. Several times we have sat under their counsel, but also we have learned a lot of things from them. I admire them. They celebrated their 50 years. Wow. I think that was this year, sometime this year. And
50 years.
Yes, they're 50 years in marriage. So that's a couple I admire. That's a couple I look up to. And every time I organize marriage sessions, I invite them because they always bless our lives.
Yes, it's true. And Stephen, apart from our parents, because clearly we've seen we have to pick some things from, like, are there people that you actually pick things from along the way?
50 years is good.
I know, 50 years, I'm encouraged, yeah.
That's a good encouragement. I know.
But in 49 and a half years.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very long time.
I agree that, of course, there are people that you need to. In life, you can't do it alone. You can't do life alone.
Yes.
And if you're a loner, that is, you are not on this planet. Maybe you belong to Mars. It is true that in life you get help along the way in terms of mentorship, in terms of admiration. There are people you look up to, and you're like, okay, if I can manage this like this, this like this, this like this, I'll be okay. For example, I have a strong admiration for your marriage. I love
50 years.
First the 50 years. 50 years is the target mark. But for now, in my half a year, but officially, not half a year, I'm like, okay, if there are certain things that if I can love my wife like this, hold her like this, let her be cheeky or playful, I'm like, I think, So I agree that there is, along the journey of this institution, you need to have mentors. If you do not have mentors, it is going to be another story altogether. You will look for help where you think you don't need help, and your marriage will go down the drain. So you need to learn how to be vulnerable, to have the sessions of counseling in the event that there is a conflict. That is one. Number two, you need to understand that some, not copying and paste, but some learning from someone who has been there before adds flair to the marriage. If you have not been a person who goes out with your partner and you see a certain party doing the same, okay. When you bring it in the marriage, it brings some freshness. So I fully agree that you need mentorship along the way.
Oh, I thought marriage would do our marriages and just run. No, but it's very important that we actually get people to move with. Please get someone that you can walk this journey with, and then life becomes easier. And also there's someone you're looking up. At what point in our marriage should we bring in our parents? If we have a conflict in marriage, or at what point do we bring in our parents? Or should we actually bring in our parents?
I think that's a sensitive one, and it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yes.
There are marriages where you don't actually need to bring in your parents, depending on the type of parents that you have and how best they can support you. For example, me, my mom is a marriage counselor. She was, like I told you, she was heading the married women at her church, the married women in Mothers Union. And my husband has some issues that he feels comfortable discussing with her, especially when it comes to parenting.
Okay.
So sometimes when we have a disagreement over that, you call mommy, she will tell you. It's called for me, my mother and my husband. When it comes to especially the areas of parenting, so where we have a conflict or anything of the sort,
Mommy can
tell
come.
us, you call mommy, she'll advise us on how to handle this. So mommy can come in, but not everything, definitely. So there are some areas where you really need parents to come in. But I think as parents, it's not a one-side thing of I'm coming to defend my daughter, I'm coming, you know. That's why I'm saying that it's not a one-size-fits-all. Yes, we have to be a little sensitive on what issues we communicate to our parents and at what point they are supposed to actually come into our marriage. If I'm not comfortable with my mother-in-law coming into my marriage, I think my husband should not be calling him in. So we really need to be sensitive to what is the other party saying.
Okay.
If it's about calling my mother-in-law,
If you know has done bad things, let them call you mother.
You know, that is probably, he can get help from my mother if you know,
it's
and
really
I can also
bad
get help from his mother, but that is in consultation with him. I don't think I would do that if he's not comfortable with that, because some people are not comfortable with you bringing their parents on board. So we have to really be sensitive on that part.
Okay. Mr. Wagobi, what's your take on bringing our parents into our marriages? I'm hoping within the 6 months they have not had to call a parent. Otherwise, it would be bad. But at what point do you think, or is it even, should we be calling our parents to come into our marriages?
Look, parents are our gods on earth, and we ought to respect them as much as we can and love them too. When you reach a degree of seeking for help, the ideology is those are the people that are extremely generous with giving you the help because you are theirs. You should be, as she said, sensitive when to communicate what and what challenge probably is being fronted. There are certain challenges whereby you have the capacity to manage them. Friends can give a hand. Your colleagues in the journey can give a hand. And there are certain experiences whereby a counsel or a word from daddy or mommy is what can save the moment. So you need to be sensitive on how best you can communicate in case you need of help. You just have to be a little bit sensitive because not everything will work.
If you don't cook for me nice food,
that one you can at least talk about it first before you graduate in levels
you
of
say, Mommy, this one is not cooking. And yet I left home when you were cooking for me. Good
It was more trouble.
Yeah, it may bring more trouble in the home. Yeah.
So as parents, because clearly we have seen that every generation is somehow not better, but it's different from the generation.
From the past. Sure.
I am thinking if right now you had 4 mothers, your child would be the first one to beat you because if the things they're doing, they may say, Daddy, what is happening, you know? As the children that we've mothered, what model marriage, specifically marriage, should we portray for these children, given that we are the first they're seeing about marriage?
I think one of the things that we should do first is, number one, create the type of character and create the type of vision in your home that you would want your child to follow. So what is your ideal model home? And that is what you're going to work towards. And every child that is born into that home will find themselves doing the same things. In others, they'll fall into place, given that there's a vision. If you create your home as a God-fearing home, a peaceful home, a place where people find harmony, a place where people communicate effectively and yet efficiently, when our children are born into that home, because it starts with us as a couple, I mean, how do you treat your wife? How do you treat your husband? And then once the children find these things, they'll easily blend in. Because I find it so hard to tell them, do this, when I'm not doing it. If I say respect people, I have to respect them myself. So I do have a catchword that says, change starts with you. You're not going to inculcate a value in your child that you don't have. Because 80% of the time is that they'll pick on what they say us do, not what we tell them to do. So be the type of person that if your child became like you, you would actually be proud of it.
But Rachel, that brings me to something. We've seen people that now, for example, the picture you have of growing up and the marriage your parents had. But you've seen people, that couple can have 5 children, and 3 will follow them, and the other 2 will be complete story altogether. So, what brings that, and how do we help? How do we come in that we can have all the children the way we want them to be?
One of the things that I realized our parents did is, whereas parenting is for both of you as a couple, it does not mean that you have to do 100% of the job. There are very many people out there who are willing to support. One of the things our parents did, they took us to conferences so much. You know, when you get to hear someone else's experience, it feels different from the normal mommy's voice, daddy's voice at home. So there are things that you learn. Because churches organize these things. So you cannot be 100% in everything as a person. Even if you've done it, your child might fail to do it, but find them someone that can support you do that. It can be someone that you trust, and you set them up for such a person to talk to them. Or you can just set them up with the kind of peers that you want them to be like. Because even the type of people they hang out with are the type of people that they are going to become like. So when we were growing up, I realized that our parents really wanted to know who our friends are. So they would encourage us to bring our friends home. They would encourage us to know who their parents are, where do they stay, where are they your friends, like what is the thing that you really share in common. And these are the things that also helped grow us. Because she knows that if you're with so-and-so, this is where they stay, these are her parents and all that. So I think the other thing that we can do is let's not die alone as parents and reach out to people that can support you in parenting your children.
What things do you desire? Like things you say that if my marriage is like this and my children can be like that, I am happy.
That is very simple. God-fearing, respectful, and humble.
Why is it that simple?
Because you see, it's what I want the home to have. I want a home to communicate that to the children. If my children can exhibit morals that I think are right, or that have helped us move a certain journey, it will reflect that there's some good work behind the closed doors. So if I have a child who fears God as number one, it's a positive. I don't want a child who will not know how to pray to God in times of hardship. I don't want to have a child who doesn't know God. That will not be my work done. I would rather put in an effort to see that this child becomes good. So I just want, the word simple means that I am determined to do it. I will not divert from that. And if I am not able to do it, I know there is a support system. There are friends you have, the ones they call uncle, auntie. They really do a good hand in parenting. They are counselors. They are people that can communicate certain things to children in their language, because teens will understand fellow teens. So imagine you have a teenager who has a fellow teen as a friend, and they agree on certain values that are positive. Of course, you'll have a good child. So the simple things that I believe are simple, we shall put an effort to it to see that these kids are in that path.
Okay. Do you think it is good, okay, maybe let me say from our point, when we were growing up, do you think it would have been nice if our parents would have introduced us to other couples so that we see how they do their thing and copy a thing or two?
other couple.
Mm.
Yeah, you see, these things are, it's not a one game, it's not a one team play. There are two teams here. I strongly believe in an effort done by particular groups of people. When you're exposed, you learn a lot. You cannot, for example, you want to earn money, but you cannot go to town to work, or you cannot go to your office to work, and you sit at home and maybe you're resting. You are not going to be productive for that 2-hour time you've seated there and watching TV. If it was an expression of you have come at home, other couples have come, uncle so and so has come with the wife, dad is married, uncle so and so has come with the wife. The young ones are going to speak the same language that, Mnaki, these are our values. So you have been exposed to this degree of, if this is married, this is this one.
This is working out.
This
This is working. Clearly, they
you
should
learn.
be
So we have to give ourselves that room to experience learning at all.
at all level.
At all.
Okay. How about Racheal? What do you think?
I think it's very, very good for us to expose our children to other couples. Sometimes when a parent struggles with a certain child, I learned from even these days, but most of our days of growing up, we usually used to have holidays away from home. Okay, in my father's house it was not common, but people usually
I was going to
came.
ask which people do you go?
No, for us, people usually came home, so we had a full house during holiday. But I also know my friends who would go to the village, uncle, auntie. So some of these things are learned from the homes they go to. So if you're careful enough to give your child to someone you trust, and they have a certain value set that they can put into them, they don't fear your child these days. Fear, in quotes, parents sometimes fear telling their children some things. So they don't fear your child the way you would. So they send them over to that person. In 2 months, really, at least a year, those are like 4 months plus December holiday. Really, they've learned a lot. So we are not perfect. We are all learning. I am not perfect, but there's someone else that can do it better than I do in a certain area. I send my child over and they pick a leaf or two.
Because I'm thinking if maybe there's something that I'm not doing right, maybe as a parent, okay? Maybe marriage can work out. Because I've said before, I know people who say the way my parents were, I can never get married. But yet when you see how another person relates, you're like, okay, maybe.
It's not all they will pick a leaf.
So would you send your children to interact with some couples that you think are good for them?
True. And that is one of the ways of also helping them to build their networks. And create the type of network that they would run to in case something happened. So it is very, very good for us to create such networks for them while they are still young. And when they go to that couple, they will meet their children.
And they also pick something.
And then they will pick a leaf. So it will limit their time of connecting with some mother that you don't really like. It's also a technique.
There are some people you don't like.
Not people, but there are some of those characteristics you would not want them to pick on. So if you find that they are kind of picking from different sources that you don't like, if you send them and deliberately assign them to a certain, exactly, you'll find that that is the time they have. Those are people they associate with, those are people they grow up with, those are the friends they'll make, and at the end of the day, you'll have achieved in a way or the other.
Okay, thank you very much. As we come to a close, Stephen, what would you tell parents out there, marriages out, like what would you tell them about the effect of our marriages on our children, but also our parents' marriages on us?
God has given you a mandate to do your part of nurturing this child in His ways. And as a parent, His responsibility, if you can achieve that in His ways, the Lord will support the other part. Because if you bring up the child in His ways, of course, there are certain things that will be respected at all costs. I just encourage parents, first of all, parents to these children, his marriages. Just do your best to create an environment that is as comfortable as it can be for these kids to learn from you. Even a 2-year-old will see it and memorize it. That slap you give the child will either make them love you or hate you. How do you communicate? I'm communicating. I'm punishing you for this. They will know, Daddy beat me, but beat me for this reason. If you just throw out a hand, they will not understand you because they'll recall that incident. So build a very comfortable environment for a child to openly say things to you. That is one. To create a culture within your home to better yourselves. Allow yourself to learn from these youngsters because they also carry something that they want you to experience. You may give them the best advice, but you want to experience it. So if you accept that experience into your home, at least you understand them much better. And as they grow up, they'll pick up those attributes that help them go somewhere.
Racheal, what would be your parting shots to our viewers today?
Life is what you make it. So make the right choices. The life is yours to live. Pick up from your parents what is good and leave what is not. And at the end of the day, create your own experience. Become a better version of your parents. Become a better version of your upbringing. And that is what your children will take on, and encourage them also to become a better version of you. So it is not about picking on and taking on. It's about becoming better and better as life goes on.
You've heard from Racheal, you've heard from Stephen, and how their experiences have shaped their marriages, but more so your choices. As much as those who've been blaming our parents that our marriages are because of our parents, let us know that all things happen because of the choices you make. You can choose to be like your parent, you can choose to be better. But whatever happens, let us be better parents for our children. To let our marriages be better for the sake of our children. Thank you very much for watching here at Church of Uganda Family TV with me, Phiona Mbowa. Have a good evening.